Hey guys, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a book haul. I have so many books that I've hauled over the course of April and kind of the end of March. So I have quite a few books to talk about. Most of these books are thrifted, some of them are new, and then some of them were gifted to me by publishers. I also apologize if I sound a little bit nasally. I have a little bit of a cold, so just bear with me. So let's get into it. So the first group of books I'm going to go over were books that were gifted to me by publishers. I wanted to give a quick disclaimer and say that these books I received for free from publishers in exchange for an honest review. But even if I were paid for these, I will always say my honest review no matter what. The first 5 books I have were gifted to me by Candlewick Press. I will link them down below if you guys are interested in following them on social media. So first up, they sent me an arc of Never Trust a Gemini by Freya Nicole Wolf. This is a YA contemporary romance and it follows our main character Kat. And Kat has a huge crush on her best friend Allison, but Allison is 100% into boys. Until this new girl named Morgan comes along and Kat has a huge crush on her, but there's only one problem. Morgan is a Gemini. And to Kat, their signs are not compatible whatsoever, but she can't fight her feelings for Morgan nonetheless. This just looks super cute and I absolutely love the cover. It is so freaking cute. And by the way, this one releases on May 9th. So up next, I was sent Share Better and Stress Less, A Guide to Thinking Ecologically About Social Media by Whitney Phillips and Ryan Milner. This one is also an ARC and it released on March 14th. This is a YA nonfiction and it kind of chronicles how people can pollute the online landscape rather than just the physical. I actually did already end up reading this one and it will be in my April wrap-up, so keep an eye out for that one. Up next, I was sent Confessions of a Candy Snatcher by Phoebe Sinclair. This is a middle grade book that follows our main character Jonas, who, as a prank on Halloween, steals candy from other trick-or-treaters. However, Jonas is really racked with guilt and someone threatens to tell the whole school about his candy snatching. But then Jonas's friend persuades him to own up to what he did in a zine that she publishes to help him come clean. This sounds really, really cute and it sounds like it's going to be a great story about knowing right from wrong and owning up to your mistakes, and I think this is just going to be super cute. So the last 2 books I have from Candlewick are actually books that have already been released. Up first, I have The Family Fortuna by Lindsay Egar. This is a YA fantasy and it follows our main character Evita, who lives and works in her family's circus. And according to the synopsis of the book, she's beaked and feathered and her act incites blood-curdling screams. Then when an artist is commissioned to make paintings of the family members, Evita is horrified by the rendition of herself and what she sees. Evita then starts to begin to question whether or not she wants to be in the circus anymore, but she's her family's top act and her father, the ringmaster, won't let her escape. So this book sounds like it's going to be really, really interesting. I have never really read like a circus-based story, but this sounds really interesting and I'm really curious to see what this whole beaked and feathered situation is, and this sounds like it's going to be really centralized on family relationships. So the next and last book that was gifted to me by Candlewick Press is All Our Hidden Gifts by Carolyn O'Donoghue. And first off, can we just take a moment to appreciate the cover that looks like a tarot card, because it is absolutely stunning. This is a YA kind of mystical story and it follows our main character Maeve, who finds a dusty old pack of tarot cards at school and starts giving out readings. She then gets strong-armed into doing a reading for her ex-best friend Lily, and Maeve pulls a card from the tarot card deck that shouldn't have even been in the deck. And 2 days later, Lily goes missing. So then Maeve goes on a mission to find out what happened to Lily. I absolutely love mystery books and I also love books that have to do with tarot cards and just any kind of like witchy elements I absolutely love in books. So I feel like I'm absolutely going to love this one. So the next and last book I have that was gifted to me by a publisher is The Half Moon by Mary Beth Keane, and this one was gifted to me by Scribner. This is an adult fiction contemporary and it follows a married couple, and this book heavily centers around the dreams that we cling to as we age and how we have to be okay with maybe our dreams not going as we planned or life not going as we planned. And the 2 people in this marriage go so far to achieve their dreams that they end up losing each other. And this is kind of the story of how they found their way back. I actually already read this one because it published on May 2nd, so I will talk more about my thoughts on it in my April wrap-up. So the next group of books I have are books that I bought new. I don't typically buy books new unless there's a title that I've really been wanting. This first one I'm not sure if I put in my last haul video or not, but I'm just gonna haul it anyway, and that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. If you guys want to see my review of this one, I am going to link it down below. I read this one in March. This one is an adult fiction, kind of a drama book, and it follows this group of pretentious young students who go to an elitist college in Vermont. This group of students is very exclusive, and the professor who leads them only takes 5 or 6 students at a time. So it's a very exclusive group and it's very hard to get into, but our main character Richard works his way into the group. The group heavily studies Greek and classics, and they become dangerously obsessed with the idea of Dionysian bacchanals, and chaos ensues. Like I said, I have already read this one and I will be linking my March wrap up down below. The next book I have is Late to the Party by Kelly Quinlan. This one is a YA contemporary, kind of a romance, and this book follows our main character Cody. Cody is a very quiet artist type. She doesn't really go out much, and she's had her 2 same best friends forever. Until one day her friends convince her to crash a party with them, and she meets a kid named Ricky and she catches him kissing another boy in the dark. And because Cody is gay herself, she kind of feels solace in Ricky and they become fast friends. And then Cody goes on this adventure with Ricky and his friends, doing things she's never done before all summer, like staying out late, sneaking out, going to parties, things like that. But the thing is, she never tells her 2 best friends. I actually already read this book and I will be talking about it in my April wrap-up, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. So the next book I have that I bought new is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This is an adult historical literary fiction and it takes place in the 90s. It follows our main character Casey, who is blindsided after a really bad breakup and her mother passes away. So she decides to move to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and her only objective is to live a full and creative life. So this book kind of seems like it's going to be about starting over and finding love again and igniting creative passion, and I've heard non-stop good things about this book, so I'm super excited to read it. The last 2 books I bought new I actually picked up from Books A Million recently. I just can't resist the Books A Million bargain section. They have so many great books. The first one I have is The Dating Playbook by Farah Rashan. This book is the second in a series to The Boyfriend Project by Farah Rashan, which I absolutely loved, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So I really wanted to continue on in the series. And this book follows Taylor from the first book. Taylor is a personal trainer and she's having a really hard time making ends meet until she meets a guy named Jamar Dixon who really wants to go into the NFL. And Jamar is convinced that Taylor can help him get back into shape before he goes back into football. However, when Jamar and Taylor are spotted together by a journalist, Taylor blurts out the first thing that comes to her mind, and it's that they're a couple. So now they kind of have to pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend. I absolutely love the fake dating aspect. It's one of my favorite tropes in books, and I really like Farah Rashan's writing. It really reminds me of Talia Hibbert, who I absolutely love, so I can't wait to read this one. So the last book I have that I bought new is Forging Silver into Stars by Bridget Kemmerer. This book I'm so excited for because it is the spin-off series from the Cursebreakers trilogy, which I read and absolutely loved. It's one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, so I was so excited to find out that Bridget Kemmerer was doing a spin-off series. This book actually follows an entire different band of characters, but I believe there is some cameos of the characters from the first 3 books. But nonetheless, I'm just so excited to be back in this universe because I was so upset to finish the original trilogy, and I just can't wait to read this one. So the last and biggest group I have of books are books that I got thrifted. I've done quite a few book thrifting videos on my TikTok recently, and I have gotten quite a few books from doing those videos. If you guys don't already follow me on TikTok, I'm actually the most active on there, so I will link it down below for those of you interested. First off, I picked up a copy of Lord of the Flies by William Golding. One of my major goals in 2023 is to try to read more classic literature, so when I saw this one in this really interesting size of book, I just felt like I had to pick it up. I've actually read quite a few books that were inspired by Lord of the Flies, but I've never actually read the source material, so I'm really excited to read this one. And for those of you who don't know anything about Lord of the Flies, it's basically a story about all these boys who get stranded on an island, and at first it's really fun, but then they realize that they have to survive. So the next book I have is another classic, and that is The Stranger by Albert Camus. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much about what this book is about, but I have been seeing it like everywhere on Classics Book Talk. And this one says, through the story of an ordinary man who unwittingly gets drawn into a senseless murder on a sun-drenched Algerian beach, Camus explored what he termed the nakedness of man faced with the absurd. So this is a really short book, but this sounds really interesting, and I really like books that are kind of like a lens on either characters or like specific traits of humanity. So I just feel like I'm really going to enjoy this one. The next book I have is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you guys saw my recent unhaul video, I actually unhauled my book of the month edition of Daisy Jones and the Six, and I picked this one up instead. I try to read paperbacks as much as possible instead of hardcover because I find that just over the years with everything that I do with my hands, like sewing and reading and all the previous jobs I've had, my knuckles and wrists really start to hurt when I lift hardcover books for a long amount of time, which I know sounds a little bit silly, but I really want to be as comfortable while reading as possible. So I started to slowly replace some of my hardcovers with paperback instead. I absolutely loved The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I read by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so I feel like this one is going to be an absolute banger. So the next book I have is Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. This is an adult fiction, and it follows this married couple that is seemingly a perfect power couple. The synopsis for this one is really vague, so I have no idea what to expect, but it does say a landmark novel about marriage, power, and perception. Groff delivers a deeply satisfying novel about love and art that is unlike anything that has come before it. I've heard really good things about this one and I can't wait to read it. So up next I have Elusive by Emily Lloyd Jones, and this is a YA kind of sci-fi story. This book follows a girl who has the ability to change her appearance at will after an experimental vaccine is released, and it gives select few superhuman abilities. I heard about this book a really long time ago somewhere on BookTube, and it was very highly raved about. I totally forgot I even had this on my TBR, but when I saw it at the thrift store, the cover really jumped out at me, and I was surprised to find that I already had it on my TBR. This one sounds really interesting. The next book I have is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This book is actually translated from Italian. This is an adult historical fiction novel, and it follows these two young girls named Elena and Lila who live in Naples in the 1950s. And I've heard this is a really powerful story of friendship and love and overcoming hardship. Like I said, I've heard nothing but good things about this, and I've been really interested in reading more different types of fiction, like historical fiction and literary fiction, and when I saw this one at the thrift store, I just knew I had to pick it up. The next book I have is Bridge of Clay by Marcus Zusak. I read The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak a couple years ago, and I absolutely loved it. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite books. And I haven't read any of his other books yet, so I just had to pick this one up when I saw it. I honestly don't know anything about this one, so I'm gonna read the synopsis on the back. This one says, the breathtaking story of five brothers who bring each other up in a world run by their own rules. As the Dunbar boys love and fight and learn to reckon with the adult world, they discover the moving secret behind their father's disappearance. At the center of the Dunbar family is Clay, a boy who will build a bridge for his family, for his past, for greatness, for his sins, for a miracle. The question is, how far is Clay willing to go, and how much can he overcome? If I know absolutely anything about Marcus Zusak and his writing, is that I'm probably gonna cry when I read this. Sometimes I absolutely love reading a book that is just absolutely gonna destroy me, and I think this book is definitely going to be one of those. I also love family-centered stories, so I just know I'm going to love this one. So the next book I have is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is an adult literary fiction, and it follows a girl named Clara who is described as an artificial friend. She's in a store and she's observing people and kind of waiting to be chosen. Clara remains hopeful that a customer will choose her, but she's warned that the matters of the human heart can be quite fickle. This book sounds like a really interesting concept, and like I said earlier in this video, I really tend to like books that take a really interesting POV to kind of explore human nature and elements of humanity. So I'm super excited to read this one. This next book I was super excited to find at the thrift store, and that is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I read Beach Read by Emily Henry last year and I absolutely loved it, so I was super excited to pick up another one of her books. This book follows our two main characters, Poppy and Alex, who are absolute polar opposites, where Poppy is very outgoing, she has insatiable wanderlust, whereas Alex prefers to stay home with a book. They actually live pretty far apart from each other, but due to an agreement they made several years ago in college, they decide to go on a vacation together every year. So for a straight decade, every summer they have gone on a week vacation together. But then something happens and Poppy and Alex are no longer speaking. But then Poppy convinces Alex to go on one last vacation so she can try to save their friendship. So this book seems like it's gonna be a second chance romance or maybe a friends to lovers. Overall, this sounds super cute and I can't wait to read it. Up next, I have Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. So this book is a YA fantasy that is a Cinderella retelling, and it follows our main character Isabel, who is actually the ugly stepsister who cut off her toes to fit into the glass slipper. But then the prince discovers Isabel's deception and her whole world is flipped upside down. She then becomes very spiteful and kind of goes on a revenge spree. I've heard really good things about this book, and I absolutely love any kind of like fairy tale retelling. And this one sounds really interesting because it takes place from, I guess, one of the villains' perspective. So I feel like I'm really gonna enjoy this one. Up next, I have On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. So this is an adult literary fiction, and I've heard this one is kind of like letters that a son is writing to his mom, and these letters end up unearthing some kind of family history. I have heard glowing reviews for this book, so when I saw this at the thrift store, I was so excited. I didn't realize this when I picked this book up, but some of the stuff in this is actually underlined, so I'm kind of curious to see what the previous owner of this book had that kind of like spoke to them. But anyways, like I said, I've heard nothing but good things about this, and I can't wait to read it. Bear with me, I only have a couple more books left. The next book I have is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I've seen this book floating all over Book Talk, and I've heard nothing but glowing reviews about it. If you guys learn anything from my videos, it's that I'm such a victim to the hype of books. If somebody really hypes up a book, I'm probably gonna buy it, even if I don't even know what it's about. This book says, 2 sisters, 1 brutal murder, a quest for vengeance that will unleash hell itself, and an intoxicating romance. I heard this book kind of dances on a fine line between YA and adult romance, and obviously I'm going to be curious to see what they mean by that. I've read through a lot of the YA fantasy on my 3 YA fantasy shelves, so I definitely want to add more to my TBR, so I was super excited to find this one. Up next, I have The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This is another super hyped book that I really wanted to read around the time when it came out, but I never got around to it, and I also just didn't have a copy. So like I said, this is an adult thriller, and it follows this therapist who starts becoming obsessed with one of his patients. That's all I know about this one, but I have heard really good things about this, so I'm super excited to read it. I have 2 more books left. We are very close to the end. The next book I have is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This one is an adult thriller, and it has been described to me as The Breakfast Club meets a apartment in Paris, and there's a murder involved. But anyways, I've heard nothing but good things about this book. Lucy Foley, I've heard so many raving reviews about. I also have the guest list by her, but I haven't quite gotten to it yet. But I was really excited to find a newer title at the thrift store. The last book I have is a book that has been on my TBR for like years now. It's one of the oldest books on my TBR, and that is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. I'm gonna be honest, I know next to nothing about this book. I know that it's a literary adult fiction. I know that it's weird, and I know that it potentially has fabulism in it. This says, A Tale for the Time Being weaves across time and space as it probes the relationships between writer and reader, fact and fiction, as well as history and memory and myth, in a brilliantly inventive, beguiling story of our shared humanity and our search for home. When I posted this book in one of my most recent TikToks, people were telling me that this book is an absolute sob fest, but also that it's very moving and that it's very good. So I'm trusting your opinion. Anyways, like I said, this has been on my TBR for such a long time, so it must have intrigued me at some point in my life. So I really hope that I enjoy this one. So those are the roughly 25-ish books that I have hauled over the course of April. I've been trying to limit most of my book shopping to thrift stores, but lately the thrift stores have just had some of the best book finds that I have ever seen. And like I said, I post my Thrift With Me videos on TikTok, so I will link that down below for those of you interested. But anyways, I'm so excited about all these titles. I think this is one of the best hauls I've ever done, and I'm so excited to add these to my TBR. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like and subscribe down below, and hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss a single upload. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye!